Hi, good morning. I guess I'll start by just introduce myself. My name's Tom Livesey. I've been a member or involved in this organization since 1980, and I wanted to talk today about my career and talk about the future of pilot hiring. This group's been a big part of my professional life and social life, and it's always nice to see everyone, so thank you for coming, and I guess we'll get started here. I'll be 61 this year. I was born in 1962, right at the tail end of the baby boomers. Grew up in San Jose, California. Fell in love with airplanes at an early age. My dad had a business near the airport, so I spent a long time watching airplanes. So by the time I was a teenager, I felt that being a pilot was a cool thing to do. So I ended up going to school in San Jose and got a degree in marketing, and then I started flight lessons when I was 16 in high school junior year. My first real job, to get paid to fly, which is one of your first goals as a pilot, is after paying, is I did traffic reporting, where I flew a reporter over the freeways in San Francisco Bay Area, and they would report on traffic conditions with the commute and all that. That was a cool job. We would stay kind of low and hover around the Golden Gate Bridge. That was a fun job. And I finished college in 1987, and I had a short stint job in Salt Lake City in 1987. It didn't last too long. It wasn't really what I turned out to be. So I wound up in Michigan in 1988, and I've been there for 35 years. Met a wonderful lady, and I have 3 daughters who reside in Michigan. That's my brother and I. In 1969, we took a flight to Disneyland, and this is the return flight back to San Jose. I'm the good-looking one on the right. By the time I was 18 years old, I'd already flown various trips, family vacations. My parents were from the United Kingdom, so we'd gone to London and Scotland, I'd been to Honolulu, Hawaii. And so I thought I'd plot all this, and I kind of figured out the miles, and I'd already flown almost 40,000 miles on various numbers of different kinds of airplanes. I remember particularly one flight I did to London. It was Pan Am, San Francisco, Seattle, London, 747. And then a stop over in London, and we did a Hawker City Trident from London to Glasgow. So, some good memories. This was the traffic watch airplane that I flew back in the early 80s. This is the airport where I learned to fly. It's called San Jose International Airport. It was a smaller airport then, but now they have worldwide service now in Japan. There's flights to Europe, and because it's Silicon Valley, so it's become quite an airport. Like I said, I graduated in '87, was in Salt Lake for a stint, and then I moved on to Detroit in 1988. That was one of the airplanes I flew in 1987, the Conrail 240. And we flew for USA Today newspapers. We had to fly to Fort Collins, Colorado, and pick up the newspapers and deliver them back to Salt Lake City, because there wasn't enough time to drive them back for morning delivery for it to be current news. So we did that Sunday night through Thursday night, so for delivery for Monday through Friday morning. That was one of the other Conrails they had. We actually did a charter to Toledo, Ohio, and that was the airplane we flew as an XT-29 Air Force Navigator. That's me in 1987 when I had hair. That was me flying the Navajo Chieftain in California. So by 1988, I was getting anxious about trying to find an airline job, and I sent resumes to, if anyone's familiar with the JP Airline Fleet Book, it lists every airline in the world with an address and phone number, and I sent resumes to every airline, hoping somebody could call and say, hey. But happened to chance, a fellow member of this group, Bill Brooks, worked for Emory in Indianapolis, and he knew somebody that was working with this small Convair 240 operation in Detroit, and he gave my name to this person. This guy contacted me, and I basically got hired over the phone. So I wound up getting a DC-8 freight ride from LAX, Los Angeles to Cincinnati, and wound up in Detroit for school. And that was what I was supposed to do. But after about 3 weeks, the owner of the company said, no, we're not going to do this. I'm shutting the whole thing down. You guys are all out of a job. So our training instructor was nice enough to go to offices at Willow Run Airport and talk to other airlines, and he got us all hired at Transcontinental Airlines, which it was one of the places I was interested in because I had Convair experience. And he basically backdoored us in. He basically walked into the chief pilot's office and said, hey, I got these 6 pilots that need jobs. You have to hire them all. So we all got hired. So this was the airplane that I flew at Willow Run. It's a Convair 340, 440. We had 3 of them, and we did automotive cargo, just like Ford, GM, Chrysler, had plants, production plants all over the Midwest, and if the production lines were running short of any sort of parts, windshields, wiring harnesses, bucket of bolts, I mean, you name it, they would get a phone call, could you fly this by air? Because the cost of shutting down a production line was millions of dollars per hour at a car plant. So they happily spent thousands of dollars to save millions. And that was me in Rockford, Illinois, in 1988, near Christmas time. And yeah, we wore kind of a gray, I looked like a Greyhound bus driver. I wasn't used to the weather in Michigan, so my first year was a little rough, because I was worth nice weather, but Michigan's a little cold and snowy. And the Convair did not have heat in the cockpit until you got airborne, so it was pretty cold. Anyway, we did a lot of automotive parts, like I said, and here's I made up a route map of all the places I flew from Detroit with the Convair. And these were all, we never laid over, maybe seldom, but it was always fly to Norfolk, Virginia, drop the cargo, turn around and go back to Willow Run. Or we went this one trip I did to Nashville, we went all the way to New Orleans, and then we flew back. And we went to Monroe, Louisiana, which happens to be the birthplace of Delta Airlines. I did not know that until I went there. After about 9 months on the Convair, the airline was buying more airplanes that are getting DC-8s. And the director of training called one day and said, hey, we'd like to go to school, we'll teach you how to fly DC-8. Well, I didn't have a lot of experience. As I said here, I had about 1,200 hours total time, which is not a lot of flight time for a pilot to be flying a big jet. But they sent me out to school, we went to United Airlines, and I learned how to fly the DC-8. I started flying that as a first officer, and then right seat. And that particular morning, we were going to Atlanta, but the weather was bad, so we had to divert to Greensboro. Is it South Carolina, Greensboro? I think so.
Greensboro, North Carolina.
Greensboro, North Carolina, thank you. I knew it was over there somewhere. And then we also had some passenger airplanes, so we got to do some charter work. This is actually Lourdes, France, which if you're a Catholic, there's a pilgrimage to Lourdes. So we took a whole bunch of people to Lourdes, and then we flew the airplane up to London. And that's one of the airplanes in the pattern at Willow Run doing training. We didn't have full-fledged simulators that were category D. So when a pilot was training, they'd actually have to go out with a training pilot and another crew, and they'd actually have to do 3 actual landings in the airplane before you could be certified to fly. So you know, basically had to take the airplane out for a spin. I don't know if they do that much anymore. It's all done in simulators, so. But by October 90, they were having some financial issues, and it came to a screeching halt. And so I was unemployed. First time I had to go to the unemployment office and actually collect a check. I'd never done that in my whole life. So it's a little startling if you're not used to that. But since I had experience on the DCA, there was other airlines on the field at Willow Run. So I got hired at an airline named Coletta, and that's one of their airplanes that I flew. And this happened just right as Desert Storm hit. And so we got involved in flying to the Middle East in support of the U.S. military, the Air Force particularly. And we started flying all these missions we would go to Rota, Spain, and then down to Saudi Arabia. And they wouldn't, the government didn't want us to stay, so we would fly back empty. And they were long days. I mean, we had 30-hour duty days, because a return flight after you do a revenue flight is not considered duty. You can do a tail-end ferry, they call it Part 91. So yeah, a 30-hour day is a long day. So I racked up quite a bit of hours of experience doing that. Here's the map of some of the places that we went. That's Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City. We also went out to McGuire in New Jersey. Blurt is the 4-letter code for Rota, Spain. We went to Morón, Spain. We went through Frankfurt and then down into the Middle East. Riyadh and Jamal was 2 of the cities that we went to, and Dhahran. But that conflict ended quickly by April of '91, and so I got furloughed again because they had hired way too many pilots. But that's all right, you know, things happen. But I had some other opportunities that were brewing while I was working there, and so Airborne Express hired me in June of 1991, and they were based out of near Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was the same airplane I'd already been flying, so they took me on to fly the DCA. Unfortunately, you're on probation as a pilot in your first year of employment, so you really have no recourse. And for whatever reason, they decided that I was not to be a viable employee after 361 days. So basically, they told me to take a hike, which is, you know, it does happen. There was some issues going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of at the time. They'd actually overhired pilots, and the best way to reduce your inventory of pilots is get rid of the people on probation. You can just do that. So, but I was on good terms. I had left Coletta, so I went back to Coletta, and I stayed there from '92 until 2000. I flew the DCA again, and I made captain in 1994, which was almost 30 years ago. And that was a flight to Yokota, Japan. We did a lot of work for the military. Those were fun trips to go to Japan. So, but we flew all over the Pacific Rim and Europe for the military and just general cargo. This was a trip to Russia. Well, actually, we were going to China, but we stopped in Khabarovsk, Russia, and have an airplane full of ostriches. A company in Birmingham, Alabama, had chartered our airplane to take 100 ostriches to China to be put on a farm to be bred for meat and whatever you do with an ostrich. And if you could see, see that little vent door right there? That's the cargo door, and there's a little door there. That is supposed to be completely closed when you close the cargo door. So due to whatever airplane age, weather, it was pretty cold there, that door would not close. So we had a little bit of a delay. But our mechanic finally was able to get it closed, and off to China we went, and that's when the fun started. That's still in my warehouse. Anyway, we get to China, and we weren't planning to stay. We weren't scheduled for a layover. We were just going to drop the ostriches and go to Macau. But the Chinese have certain rules about passports and visas and all that. But we were told from their embassy, our company had checked, that we didn't need visas. We just needed our passports. Well, we showed up, and they were pretty upset with us, especially me, since I was the captain, and they said, "You don't have your visa." And I said, "Well, we don't need one." "Oh, no." So they basically took us under house arrest. They wouldn't let us leave the airplane. They did finally unload the ostriches, and we spent all day at the airport trying to figure out how they're going to let us leave. It wasn't until about 12 hours later, after we'd flown all night already, they worked out some sort of agreement with the handler and some money passed hands, and we were able to leave. So now the ostriches were unloaded and then driven down a road for 8 hours to a farm. Okay, so we fly to Macau, and there's more to the story in a minute, but I'll get to that in about 2 minutes when I get to another airplane, and I'll finish that because it has a good ending. So I stayed on the DC a little bit more until about 1997, and we did fly for various cargo carriers. This is one of the airplanes we leased for Burlington Air Express. And I continued to apply at the major airlines, Delta, Northwest, United, FedEx, and all that. And I wasn't really getting a lot of bites, but it's fine, you know. I still had some time in front of my career. So Kelowna also got 747s, so I got the transition to 747 in 1998. And that was my first day on the job in Pago Pago. We flew Los Angeles, Honolulu, Pago Pago, Melbourne, Australia with two complete crews, double crew. Then we had a week off in Australia, so that was a pretty good gig. So about this time, I'm into this airplane, the summer of '98, and the phone rings one day on a layover, and it's some guy wants to know about this trip to China that I did in November, when I just showed a few minutes ago. I said, well, a bunch of the ostriches died, and so there's a potential lawsuit against the airline, and you need to come give a deposition about what happened. So I had to go to Chicago and give a deposition. And the side for the company, the bird company, was saying that because that cargo door didn't close properly and it was minus 20 degrees in Russia, that we killed the birds because we didn't properly give them ventilation and or heat cooling. Well, what they didn't know was that ostriches' body temperature is 105 degrees. And we actually had to run the air conditioning to keep the cabin cool and the whole cargo area cool, because the ostriches put out so much heat. So heat wasn't the issue. And it looked to me like the birds had been mishandled when they were unloaded, because they were unloaded with forklifts and the crates, they were up in the air at 45-degree angles. Well, you can imagine the birds were probably being thrown all over the place in the crate, and so like 36 of them didn't make the trip, they died. So this company decided they're going to sue the airline for $36 million, $1 million per bird. Well, since I was the captain of the flight, and I'm in charge of the airplane, they're going to think it's my fault too. So after the deposition, they send paperwork overnight, and my name is now added to the lawsuit, and I'm being sued for $36 million. So that was a little unnerving, but as it turned out, there's something called jurisdiction, and I know nothing about law. Since the case was filed in Birmingham, Alabama, because that's where the company was from, I had never physically been in Birmingham, Alabama, I had picked up the airplane in Anchorage, Alaska. Another crew had flown from Birmingham to Anchorage. The judge said, "You can't sue him. You don't have jurisdiction." So my name got removed from the case. It ended up being settled out of court within a year. And one of the things that saved our company, the airline, from being sued is that my flight engineer, and you have to be, people that are older in this group will understand this. They used to make a Kodak camera, a little Instamatic, that had a date timestamp on it when you took a photo. And this guy had taken a bunch of photos of the birds when we got to China. And he remembered and had them developed, and they got to the judge, and the judge said, "Well, these pictures were taken after the airplane landed, but before it was unloaded. These birds look fine. They're not dead." So the company got out of the lawsuit. Anyway, back to Pago Pago. So now I'm on the 747, and we're flying all over the world. And that's in Maastricht, Maastricht, Netherlands, excuse me. And there's always airplane people around that want to take pictures, and this one kid goes, "Hey, I like to take pictures of airplanes." And I'm thinking, oh, this will be fun. So he took a picture of me taking off, and he sent me the slide, the picture. So I'm actually in the airplane flying it right now. And that's my crew. Obviously, I'm the young guy. And these people were my mentors, even though they were the co-pilot manager, but they knew a lot more about the airplane than I did because I was brand new on it. And they were great people to fly with. He actually, the fat fellow's name is Sam Amrahani. He introduced me to Indian food. Best thing that ever happened. We also did some passenger charter work at this airline, and we did Las Vegas trips, and we went to Tahiti, and we did some Europe trips. That's actually in Barcelona, Spain. We did a flight to Barcelona that held about 420 people in all coach configuration. Then we got a contract in 1999 to go to Africa to fly for a company, and we were flying out of Johannesburg and Windhoek in Namibia. We were flying fish to Victoria, Spain, but we would have to fuel stop in Nigeria or Accra, Ghana. And that was interesting because this big security guard guy with a big gun would come on board the airplane and sit down in the cockpit. I'm not sure what he was there for, but maybe he wanted to make sure they were going to get paid before you left town. So that was always interesting. And this is with an augmented crew, so we had like 5 pilots, 2 captains, two flight engineers, 1 co-pilot. Because it was about 14 hours to do all this, to get to Europe. And it was always in the middle of the night. And the radar environment is not real good down there. So you're kind of on your own, making radio calls and lines, trying to navigate around thunderstorms. It's gotten better, but this is 30 years ago. It was still a pretty primitive radar environment for flying. And that was the airplane that we flew. They had rebranded it with this North Atlantic Airways cargo for this thing in Africa. So this is one of our airplanes, repainted. The job didn't last very long because the guy that we were flying for didn't pay the bills. And I remember we were in Victoria, Spain one morning, and they wanted us to move the airplane to Luxembourg. And of course the Spanish authorities were upset, and they said, "No, you can't leave. You haven't paid your bill." And I said, "Well, what's the issue?" "Well, you owe $30,000 in catering." I guess for all the months that we'd been flying there, the catering bill had never been paid. So I called the company and I said, "They'll let us leave if we pay the catering bill. What do you think?" And they said, "Yeah, just pay it." So Airline gave us corporate American Express cards. So my name's on the corporate American Express cards. This is Thomas Livesey, American International Airways. So I call, they tried to run the card, it's denied. Or it's call the customer service number. So I call the number and I say, hi, I'm in Spain and I got to pay this bill, corporate. Oh yes, Mr. Livesey, that's very fine. Thank you. Yeah, we'll approve that charge, but please don't use your card anymore this week. So we left town and went to Luxembourg, and the bill got paid. The company paid it. So, but yeah, that was 5 of us getting ready to leave Johannesburg to go up northern Europe. And we stayed at a compound, and the food was very good, and they took care of us. We got to go on an African safari on the day off. So it was kind of a neat experience. American International was sold to an airline called Kitty Hawk in the end of 1998. And so they weren't really in the passenger business, so we got rid of the 747 passengers, but we focused more on cargo. That was one of the airplanes rebranded to Kitty Hawk International. So we were an enemy of Kitty Hawk. If you remember Kitty Hawk, a big airline that was in Dallas, they had 727s, DC-9s. So we fed their domestic system with our international. This is a flight at Honolulu. I wanted to highlight this. This was a 1-month period in 1999 that I flew to all 6 continents in 30 days. So we did a lot of long haul stuff. It was pretty cool. We also did some work out of Detroit for Ford Motor Company, flying automotive parts back and forth to Europe. And we were flying 3 days a week to Birmingham, England, taking over engine blocks for Jaguar. They were owned at Ford at that point. And then we would bring back transmissions from Germany. We always got to stop at duty-free at Gander and a fuel stop, so we had like 45 minutes. I got really good at running in and buying a bottle of whiskey and turning the airplane in less than an hour. And we always ordered the seafood platter, and they put it on the bill as other miscellaneous, because I think our company would get mad at us if we ordered more food. Anyway, by April of 2000, there was rumblings of financial issues, and I'm in the midst of moving to a new house. I have 2 young girls, and one on the way, and the phone rings and says, hey, Tom, can you fly today? No, I'm busy. I'm moving to a new house. I got a moving truck in my driveway. Okay, we'll call you back. They call back 10 minutes later. Hey, we really need you to fly today. By the way, on Sunday, our airline is going to be completely out of business and you won't have a job. And on Monday morning, you're going to have to show up and turn in your ID. And, but can you still come out today and fly? Yeah, I'm on my way. So we went to Hartford, Connecticut. Picked up 2 engines from Pratt Whitney to deliver to Boeing. Went to Seattle. I think there was 2 or 3 flights that went there. There was 2 or 3 crews there. I think we all went to the bar. We had a couple of drinks and we went, well now what? Next day, I flew the airplane to Mojave, California, where they park airplanes in the barn or the desert, and put the airplane to bed. Actually, I went and saw Sarah and Dan, and I think I cried. Because here we are again, starting over, and I'm 38 now. It's like, this is number 8. So what am I going to do now? Well, back in the late 90s, 2000, being a 747 captain pulled a lot of weight. You could find a job pretty quick. So I started sending out resumes, and within a week I had a job with this company, Southern Air, flying their freighters. And so at least I had a paycheck and I had money coming in, trying to get back on my feet. But I was really at the point in my career, I really need to find a serious place to go. I need to go with Delta or United. Enough of this cargo stuff that's not working out well. So I applied at a bunch of places, and the phone started ringing off the hook, and JetBlue called, and Southwest called, and American called, and UPS called, and Cathay Pacific called. If I said South, I did say Southwest. If I didn't mean to add them too. And by the end of the year of 2000, UPS said, why don't you come work for us? So since I was familiar with the cargo business, I thought, well, okay, UPS, I didn't really know a lot about them. I was a little reluctant because I had had a bad experience at Airborne Express. I thought, well, all right, we'll give it a whirl. So the starting position was second officer, which is the third pilot on a 747 or a DC-8 or a 727, which I'd never done that job because we always had professional flight engineers at the other airlines, where mechanics, not necessarily pilots were the flight engineers, but here, the UPS, the third pilot was the second officer. So I got to fly this airplane. I wasn't actually the pilot, but I was one of the crew, the person that takes care of the systems. But I was very familiar with the airplane because I already had flown it at another airline. And so I sat on that and ran that panel for 2 or 3 years. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the job a lot. It was, and we went all over the place. We went to Japan, Europe, and flew with some really cool people. And then in 2003, I got the chance to, I'm sorry, I'm looking at myself. There's another 747 shot. I got to transition to first officer on the 757, 767, which I've been on since 2003. And this is one of our 767s. And that's another one with the winglets. I'm currently in the left seat captain since 2016. And that's where I'm staying put until retirement. I got about 3 more years to go. UPS has been a wonderful company to work for, and it was much greater than I thought, much better. So I'm glad that Delta didn't call. No offense to people that I know work at Delta. I mean, I wanted to commute, the big reason why I was interested in Delta Northwest is I live in Detroit, they have a base there, so I don't have to commute to work. I mean, I have to commute to Louisville. It's not so, it's easy, pretty easy to commute to Louisville, so anyway. Well, now we're going to talk about the cool stuff, or, why be a pilot? Well, it's a very good paying job. It's a great job. I work 14, 15 days out of the month. I'm home the rest of it. It's like being on vacation. So depending on your schedule, you can have another job or another vocation or have your own business or online or whatever you want to do because you have probably time to do with it. But what's going on now is there's a lot of pilots of my age, and we're all retiring, and there's not enough young people that want to take over this job. And there's some serious things brewing. There was a lot of early buyouts during COVID, so a lot of pilots left early. Demand has returned, and if anyone here has traveled recently, every flight is busy. All the seats are full. Congress is looking at changing the age to 67. They added, it was 60 until 2007, and they raised it to 65. Now they're looking at 67. People are living longer. We don't know the ramifications of that. If the FAA is going to require more stringent medical review. I go to the doctor twice a year to pass my physical. It's going to be interesting to see if that can get through Congress. I mean, it would certainly alleviate some of the retirements that are coming. I found this article this morning, and it's called The Tsunami of Pilot Retirements. Just this year alone, there'll be 2,200 pilots in the United States retiring, and up to almost 3,700 in 2028. 50% of the pilots in this country will retire in the next 15 years. Last year alone, there was 13,000 new pilots hired to replace pilots at the major airlines. Well, they all came from the ranks of the regional carriers. So when you fly to a smaller city, it's the little American Eagle jet or the Delta regional jet. Well, all those people are moving up the ladder to the big airplanes. But currently, there's over 500 regional jets that are being underutilized in the United States, not flown, parked. And to be honest, there's cities in the country that aren't getting air service because there's not enough pilots. And airlines have to make decisions on what cities they're going to go. Now, from experience, I live in Michigan. We used to have service to Flint, Michigan. Not anymore. Used to be service to Lansing, Michigan. Not anymore. Muskegon, Michigan. Not anymore. I think Detroit and maybe Kalamazoo is really the only two places that don't. And I know they cut services way up north, you know, to go up to the UP. So people have to drive now 2 or 3 hours to go to a major hub. There's a few, just some statistics I found. Delta just got a new contract, so there's quite a few, some pay raises, which is good. So the job does have some, you know, demand, and then companies are having to pay better salaries to find people. Like the regional level, like that one there in 2022 September, SkyWest, they're a regional one. They had to double the salaries to attract people. So it's an issue. I found this graph, and this is just one airline. And it's retirements per year, and I think it's before United and Continental merged their seniority list, but you can see the cumulative retirements. By 2024, 4,434 pilots have retired at United since 2012. So that's 10 years. And you go another 10 years, you're up into the 9,000 range, 12,000 range. So over a 25-year span, 12,000 pilots at United Airlines are retiring. That's one airline. Who's going to replace that? It's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately. And the problem is there's a lot of barriers to entry. This is an expensive, but this is Boeing's I'll get back to the expense in a minute. But Boeing's forecast, 602,000 pilots are going to be required in the world between now and 2043, in the next 20 years. Where are you going to find 600,000 people who want to be pilots? Pretty crazy. And just in the United States alone, we're looking at 128,000 pilots over the next 20 years. Those are some serious numbers. Well, like I said, it's still a very good job. If you want to be a pilot, you should finish college. Some airlines have even dropped their college degrees. You can do a discovery flight. The only way to get this job is you've got to get experience in the airplane. And they changed the rules a number of years that for passenger airplanes, you have to have a minimum of 1,500 hours to be a co-pilot on any airplane that carries a passenger. But it's hard to get to 1,500 hours. You have to flight instruct or fly cargo or corporate. Corporate and cargo are exempt from the 1,500 hour rule. But it could take 3 to 5 years to get 1,500 hours. So, and it costs a lot of money to get that clearance. Sorry, got ahead of myself. So these are all the licenses. First you get your private in about 65 hours, then you get your instrument rating so you can fly in the clouds. Then you get your commercial, so you can be paid to be a pilot. That's 250 hours. And you add on your multi-engine rating, so you can fly an airplane with more than one engine. Then you become a flight instructor and you build time. And so when you're teaching, you get to log that time as experience as well. And then you finally get to the right seat of a regional jet. These are some other requirements. You do have to have a physical exam. For myself, I said I had to go every 6 months because I'm over 40. only once a year for second class, like first officers. And it is. It's just plain expensive to become a pilot. I mean, you're investing like you're going to become a doctor. I found this is just I just did this full of some colleges. The ATP is like that's all they do is like lessons, and you just go there like for 8 months, and that's all you do day and night. And it's about $100,000 just get your licenses so you can start teaching. You know, Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, they have a program, you get your degree in college, which you also apply. So it's about $132,000 over 4 years. And the University of North Dakota in the same price range. Problem is, that's a lot of money to go to school. And you know, there's a lot of young people that want to be pilots. That's a barrier to entry, what I see. You know, but you gotta look at it like I'm paying now for my better future down the road. And the payback can be very good, if not quite incredible. Like I said, 3 to 5 years to get into the regional level, and then a couple years at the regional level to get hired in one of the big airlines. But when you get there, and you're relatively young in your 20s, and you start, and let's say you go to a major airline at 30, you fly for 30 years, it's a $9 million career over 30 years. I did break it down. 3 to 5 years in a regional carrier, 25 years in a major airline, some of your retirement benefits, and per diem is money you get when you travel on the road. They give you money for food, but if you add all that up, and I think that's a pretty conservative number, $9 million over a lifetime. That's a pretty good career for a job where you only have to work 2 weeks a month. And I just found this morning, that's the average salary according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. in 2023. And these are regional airline salaries for first officers. You can see the first years, depending on which regional carrier you go to, it's anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000, and then you progress. And then when you move to the captain seat, it bumps up to $150,000. I mean, that's pretty decent money for starting a flying job. And then when you get into the major airlines, Delta, that's first officer. If you're at Delta 6 years, first officer makes about $220,000 a year. So you'd probably be able to pay back some of those school loans, or your mom and dad if they help you out. There's the captain salaries, and these are constantly changing because contracts are always being renewed. Delta just got a new contract, American's working on a new contract, and these airlines are starting to pay top wages because they're trying to attract people. They need people to stay. So that's a pretty decent income for the job. So, and there's the cargo salaries. There's a whole bunch of FedEx, UPS, and then these are the captain salaries at the cargo carriers, and they're very good too. And that's current as of May 2023. Well, lifestyle pros and cons. You're not going to be home every night for dinner. If you got kids, you're not going to make every baseball game. You're not going to make every soccer game. You're going to miss dance recitals. Seniority is everything in this business. It drives everything. What days you work, when you get vacation, and what airplane you can bid. It controls your life. You can live wherever you want, but if you're based in Dallas and you live in Florida, you have to get to Dallas on your own. And they don't care where you live as long as you get to work on time. I am UPS. We have a pretty good perk. We based in Louisville, but if we have a trip that starts in another city, they will fly us to work on an airline and buy us a ticket. So a lot of my flights, I'll fly from Detroit to New York or Philadelphia or Seattle and pick up the airplane. But if I have to go to Louisville to start work, I have to go on my own. And like I said, you're going to fly all times of the day, nights, weekends, Christmas. The risk of furloughs, downsizing, bankruptcy, probably not in the near future because there's just so much demand for air travel. So I don't know if that's really going to be an issue. I mean, COVID came, airlines adjusted, but it bounced back fairly quickly. Some other things about the job, I have been all over the world, and you meet people, relationships, hotels you go to, restaurants you visit, because you end up going back to the same places. And that's really kind of a cool part of the job. And, you know, it is different from up there to look down on the earth. When you fly over the Grand Canyon, you don't just see one part of it, you see the whole Grand Canyon at once. Can't do that from a car. It's never boring. And it's always a changing environment. Some days the weather might be really good. Some days you're dodging thunderstorms, or you have fog or snow. One of my favorite places to go is Cologne, Germany. We have a hub in Germany there. We fly out of Europe, and we get to visit that city. That cathedral was built in 1100. It's 1,000 years old. It's beautiful to see. So get to see something like that is cool. And we always like to take treks. We always have the weekends off to visit some of my colleagues. And we're on our way to a restaurant outside of Cologne, Germany, in the country to go have steak dinner. And so we're on the train to get there. And then there we are having our dinner, waiting on our food, but we're having a few beers. So stuff like that makes the job a lot of fun. Get to see cool things like Mount Rainier. So I wanted to list a couple things. If you're interested, want more information, those are good organizations to get information from about the career. Talking to professionals in the career or good networking is to find out what's the best road to go. And that's why I do this talk, is, you know, I want people, if they're interested, that I could be a source, or other pilots could be a source of how do I get there. Feel free to take down my phone number or my email. And if you really didn't get enough from me, if you go to airwaysnag.com, there's an April 2022 issue of my wrote about my career. And thanks for listening. And I truly believe this, that you find your passion,